We are going beyond the headlines, asking the questions you want answered, exploring government policies and how they impact you. We are delving deeper.
Good evening and welcome to Delving Deeper. I'm your host, Sunil Lalla, and joining us this evening is no stranger to the show. It's the Honourable Marvin Gonzales. He is the Minister of Public Utilities. Good evening, Minister. Welcome back to Delving Deeper. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Good
Happy
evening.
New Year.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to you as well. And it's always a pleasure to be at this show and given the opportunity to give an account of what we are doing at the Ministry of Public Utilities, one of my favorite shows.
Lovely to hear that. Minister, so much has been happening at the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission and also at the Water and Sewage Authority, but we'll get to that in just a minute. I want to ask you firstly about the cyber breach at TSTT, which would have happened, I believe, in October 2023.
That's correct.
You would have received that report and you would have gone on record as saying that you were going to make it public, despite the fact that two former employees or two former TSTT executives have initiated legal proceedings preventing you from doing so. What's the latest on this?
Well, yes, I did receive the report. You would recall that after the breach, and based on certain communications issues that were placed in the public domain, and the fact that I had to go to Parliament and give subsequent explanation, I thought for the benefit of the public and for transparency purposes, there should have been an independent investigation into the facts and circumstances surrounding the breach, and I called for that independent investigation. And I also gave the public the undertaking that once I receive the report, it will be made public so that the people, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and all stakeholders of TSTT will be very clear as to the facts and circumstances surrounding the breach. I received the report a couple of days ago, and subsequent to me receiving that report, I received communications from attorneys representing former executives of TSTT, basically asking me to hold my hands until certain due process is complied with. And I have been in contact with my attorneys on the matter. I continue to receive legal advice so that in my quest and government's quest to make the report public, that we do not breach any of the rights of the parties that are mentioned in the report. So I am in the process yet of receiving legal advice, and once I'm given the green light to proceed with respect to laying the report in Parliament, I will do so at the earliest opportunity.
Have we seen any cybersecurity breaches since then, and what has been done to enhance that cybersecurity network so there's no possible breach? I know there are always attacks every day, but what has been done to enhance that?
A lot of work was done. A lot of money has been spent. Millions of dollars was spent on improving TSTT's cybersecurity platform, and a number of the recommendations in that report, I am pleased to say that TSTT has already complied with a number of those recommendations. So I can give the citizens the assurance that TSTT is a little bit more robust with respect to its cybersecurity platform. And since then, we have no reported incursion in TSTT.
After 3 years, the Goldsboro water treatment plant in Tobago is about to begin. That's construction. You were in Tobago last week talking about this, and at the sod turning ceremony, what update can you give on this, and how soon can we expect this to be completed?
So the contract was awarded in August last year, and once the contract is awarded, or rather executed, the first phase of that contract is the design phase for the water treatment plant. So since August last year towards the end of 2024, the contractor, together with Wasa and Wasa's project managers, they were in the process of designing the plant. And so now they are moving into the construction phase. So even though it's an 18-month contract, that 18-month process would have started in August 2024. So now we are in the construction phase, having now completed the design for the water treatment plant, and we expect that water treatment plant to be completed towards the end of 2025. And that plant will be the biggest water treatment plant in Tobago, producing approximately 2 million gallons of water per day to serve a number of communities in Goldsboro, Roxborough, Pembroke, Richmond, Glamorgan, Calder Hall, Bagatelle, Frenchfield, Scarborough, Shaw Park, Pump Mill, Darrell Spring, Lowlands, Lambeau, Patience Hill, just to name a few.
Minister, the last time you were here, you spoke about plans for the Sister Isle in terms of Tobago, customers in Tobago receiving at least a 24/3 supply. Is Wasa on target for this to meet this by the first quarter of 2025?
Certainly. I must say that the progress that we have made in Tobago is quite phenomenal. And in that regard, I would want to congratulate the team at Wasa, particularly in Tobago, led by Mr. Brian Williams, who have led a very energetic team of employees within the organization and within the Tobago region to implement a number of projects, which includes the desilting of the Hillsborough Dam, the laying of a pipeline from Signal Hill to Apex Building by the airport, the A&R Robinson Airport, the construction of a number of booster stations, the laying of a number of pipelines to reduce leakages, the extension of water in areas that never get water. So the latest project, which is the construction of the Goldsboro Water Treatment Plant, is just the latest in a series of projects and interventions that we have made in Tobago, which increase the levels of service. The latest data I've received is that 51,000 to 60,000 people in Tobago are already experiencing a 24/3 to 24/7 level of service. When the Goldsboro Water Treatment Plant is finalized and is brought under full operation, together with a number of projects targeting communities in Charlottesville and surrounding areas, the construction of booster stations, etc., the construction of large storage reservoirs, tanks, to be able to ensure that we have a sustainable supply of water, especially to communities that live on elevated areas. In the first quarter, I'm advised, in 2025, the entire population of Tobago will be in receipt of a 24/3 level of service, 24/3 to 24/7 level of service. So I want to congratulate the team at Wasa, being led by Mr. Brian Williams, who is the director responsible for that region. They have done a phenomenal job, and Tobago's water security is well in place.
The last time you were here, Minister, I remember vividly asking you about metering in terms of, people who don't receive water don't pay for what they don't receive. The Wasa CEO, the new Wasa CEO, Mr. Keithroy Halliday, he was in Tobago recently, and he spoke about in terms of metering to be pursued at some time. Do you share this view?
I totally share his view, because you see, you cannot manage what you don't measure. We are producing large volumes of water in Trinidad, and we have to continue looking at our water balance. Because whilst, yes, the drilling of wells and identifying new sources of water is critical towards ensuring that communities that are unserved and underserved, they get access to water, or some communities who do not have access to water, period. The need to continue to identify new sources is something that must be pursued. But you have to look at sustainability. How do you sustain this resource, especially given the impact of climate change and given the fact that a number of our prolific rivers and sources and underground sources, they are being impacted by climate change? We need to introduce metering so that customers at the domestic level, at the commercial level, and the industrial level, that they can engage in their own level of conservation. Because when they do so, more water will become available to the authority, and we can manage this resource for the next 25 or 30 years. So I totally agree with him. The plan when I entered in the Ministry of Public Utilities with respect to metering was that we need to stabilize and improve the grid, targeting areas that do not get access to water, and improving the levels of service across the board. We are inching closer towards this milestone of improving the levels of service across the board and seeing that we are inching there closer, then we need to start at this point in time laying the platform for universal metering at all levels in a not too distant future.
Of course, Mr. Halliday would have been on the job for, I believe, just over 2 months or so. Are you at all confident that he can change things or turn things around for the Water and Sewage Authority?
I am pretty confident. The search for a CEO in the Water and Sewage Authority was not just a local search in Trinidad and Tobago, but we look at the region and internationally, and a number of competent people from all over the world, all over the globe, applied for the job of CEO. And Mr. Halliday was eventually selected, having come from the Barbados Water Authority and spent a number of years operating in the water sector. I can tell you that he is well respected, not only in the region, but across the globe. Stakeholders in the water sector, they are quite aware of his competency. And what I have seen so far, and based on my personal interaction with him, I think we are quite lucky in Trinidad and Tobago to attract someone like Mr. Halliday to the Water and Sewage Authority. And given his experience and given his understanding of the challenges with respect to the management of the authority, I think we are in a very good place that we have someone in the driver's seat who understands the vision of transformation and what is required for us here in Trinidad and Tobago. So I am very excited that within the next 5 years and the next 10 years, we will be in an even far better place than where we are at this point in time. So he has come into the authority at a time where we would have stabilized and improved the levels of service. We have our strategic plans, and we were well on the way towards ensuring that Wasa is a model utility company. So a lot of work was done over the last 4 years. So he has not met a broken institution. What he has to do is now build upon the successes that we've experienced over the last 4 years. And I think once he does so, and he follow in the vein of what we have been doing over the last 4 years, his tenure at the Water and Sewage Authority will be very successful.
Of course, 2 months and just over 2 months is not a lot of time so far, and I assume he's still getting indoctrinated into that culture, that Wasa culture. But are there any immediate plans that he can bring to the fore? And has he spoken to you about any of these?
Yes, he is looking at the internal processes inside of Wasa. One of the things that I discovered in the authority is how bureaucratic the organization is in terms of making simple decisions. As I've said on numerous occasions, Wasa's implementation rate at its PSIP was 30-something or 20-something%, meaning that the government was making funding available. But because of its internal bureaucratic system, you were not getting the kind of output insofar as it relates to the execution and implementation of projects that were designed to improve the levels of service across Trinidad and Tobago. So we have done a lot of work in cutting and streamlining some of these outdated practices. And given Mr. Halliday's experience working at the Barbados Water Authority, he understands the need to continue to identify ways in which we can streamline Wasa's internal processes so that we can make quick decisions, have faster outcomes, implement projects at a faster rate so that the citizens can have and benefit from the investment that the government continues to make to improve the supply of water and wastewater services across the board.
Minister, when you assumed office in 2020, your main focus, I believe, was the transformation of Wasa. How far along are we with that, and what needs to be done again to see this actual transformation?
Transformation is an ongoing process. Every organization must continue to transform in order to remain relevant, in order to be able to rise above the challenges that come on a constant basis. So there's no organization, I must say, that must not continue to transform. You must always be looking at ways to make yourself relevant. Unfortunately, Wasa has found itself operating in the past and not having a model that is fit for purpose so that it can deliver upon the mandate that the citizens expect of it or that is set out in its governing legislation. So it is for that reason the government has put together a team from very early in its tenure in 2020 to transform the organization. So far, we have done a lot of work in the transformation process. We have produced a number of documents looking at its internal operations, looking at digitization, looking at its capital investment program, doing a business model for a rate review, looking at its management systems, technology, and what have you. So it was a very comprehensive exercise. And that's why I'm saying that Mr. Holiday is in a very unique and fortunate position, because he came in at a time when a lot of the work, a body of work, was done in the past over the last 4 years, from which he can now draw upon to implement key decisions to continue the transformational process. And so the transformation documents would have referred to the need to transform and to streamline Wasa's executive management. We have done so, and that's the reason why Mr. Halliday is now in the job, and we have a new executive management team in place, and they are now going through the process of continuing to streamline Wasa's executive management system. I think they have reached the second or third level. Now they are going into the the level with the collective bargaining units, and that means that they are now obligated to comply with the collective bargaining process to coordinate and collaborate with the registered majority unions. And so that is happening as we speak. The capital investment program identify a number of key projects that must be implemented in the authority to improve the supply of water. And that's the reason why over 200 projects were completed over the last 4 years. Never in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, where in 4 years, over 200 projects under different programs were successfully executed, and that's the reason why you have an improvement in the levels of service. The transformation documents also talk about the need for Wasa to digitize and automate a number of its processes and its plants and equipment. It's for that reason we commissioned an operational control center. We have deployed a number of data loggers on Wasa's transmission and distribution system. We have automated a number of booster stations. All of these things were done, Sunil, as a result of the transformation plan. So we were doing a number of things. It called for streamlining executive management, implementing capital investment projects to improve the supply of water, expanding water production, drilling of wells, automating Wasa's infrastructure, laying of underground pipelines, reducing NRW. The transformation plan and strategy incorporated all of that. But we did not wait for a new management and a new CEO to be in place before doing all of these things. So we did all of that together. So that is the reason why today we can boast of the successful completion of over 200 projects all across Trinidad and Tobago. We got access to an IDB loan, which gave us $80 million to drive some of these capital projects across the board. So that's the reason why Mr. Halliday, when he came in with his new management team, they came in at a time where the distribution and transmission system was in a far better place, or is in a far better place compared to 5 years ago, because we implemented a number of these projects which were called for within Wasa's transformation plan. So we are well on the way towards implementing Wasa's transformational plan. The executive management was just one aspect of what the plan called for.
During your election campaign in 2020, you spoke about many of the complaints that you would have received from citizens. We're heading into our next election soon. Well, we'll see how soon it is. But what has been done as you head into another general election? What has been done to ease the water woes of these citizens?
Well, one of the projects that we have done under the Ministry of Public Utilities, the Community Water Improvement Program. One of the programs that really touch the lives of communities and small rural communities all over Trinidad and Tobago, many of which never had access to water. And I can name places like Curacao, places in Sangre Grande, in Toco, in Cedros. There are places in Tabaquite, in parts of central Trinidad, in North Trinidad, never had access to water for one reason or the other. And the Community Water Improvement Program targeted those communities towards ensuring that the appropriate infrastructure would be put in place to give these communities access to water. Paramin is just an example. And as a result of the successful implementation of the Community Water Improvement Program, we moved the 24 level of service from 31% in 2020 to 65% towards the end of 2024. That means thousands of people now had access to 24/7 level of service. But let's put aside 24/7 level of service for a minute and look at communities that never had access to water, but they are getting water 3 days a week, 4 days a week. Those levels of service were also improved exponentially. So we have had a number of wins across the board. We have a lot of work still to do, but we have to acknowledge that given the efforts that we have made at the ministry, the team at the Water and Sewage Authority, the employees who work diligently over the years in communities all over, the levels of service in the authority has improved tremendously. So I can tell you, I look forward to campaigning in a lot of areas in this 2025 election year. The Southwest Water Improvement Program, I can tell you, targeting areas in Point Fortin, Labre, Losiro, Cedros, Cap de Ville, Granville. Those areas suffered for water for decades. 55,000 people getting water once every 40 days, once every 30 days. We drilled a number of wells. We laid down a number of pipelines at the Cap de Ville Road, Salazar, Trace, just to name a few. A number of wells were drilled in the Granville area. And Sunil, I am pleased to tell you that whenever I meet people who live in the southwest portion of Trinidad and Tobago, they thank the efforts of the Water and Sewage Authority, the Ministry of Public Utilities, and the government of Trinidad and Tobago for the intervention that we have made to improve the supply of water. The same thing for Tobago. I would have seen where people, in 2020, when I walked on the campaign, I met citizens who cried because of a lack of water and not having access to a reliable supply of water. The interventions that we have made over the last 4 years, I met citizens who cried because they never believed that their prayers would be answered one day. And they cried as a result of joy. They cried as a result of gratitude because finally they can now have access to a reliable supply of water. Over 500,000 people all across Trinidad and Tobago can now boast of seeing an improvement in their levels of service. But the work continues. Because whilst I can talk about these improvements, there are a number of areas where we need to make similar interventions. Of course, you can only make those interventions when the financial resources are made available to you. But coming back on the election story, I look forward to campaigning in my constituency because those areas that suffered for water tremendously in parts of eastern part of my constituency, like in Cleaver, in Dabadi, in Windy Hill, parts of Five Rivers, in Lupino, we did interventions all over the constituency of Lupino, Borneo West, which, by the way, will be now Aruka Lupino. And I can attest to the improvements where those constituents are no longer suffering for water. There are little pockets of areas still that we need to address because of their unique circumstances. And we are addressing it because this is a work that does not end. But the situation compared to 2020 is vastly different.
As you're talking about that southwestern peninsula, Cedros and Point Fortin, and going down the line, I remember you at a launch just recently, just must have been about a month or two ago, and you asking a question to the audience: where is a certain councillor. I would not mention the name, but I remember you asking that question. And some of these councillors, you've talked about some of the work that's happening on that southwestern peninsula, but are these councillors who continue to make complaints, are they unjustified, or is the southwestern peninsula are they justified, or is the southwestern peninsula receiving that improvement in water supply?
Oh, the southwestern peninsula, the water situation has turned around. These communities are now getting 55,000 people. And that's the reason why we had a major commissioning in that Labrie area a couple of months ago. I think it was in November or sometime in December, 2 weeks before Christmas, celebrating it. And the number of people that came out was testimony to the turnaround. And the people who give testimonials at the commissioning, they give their story of not having water for ages and for decades. And I listened intently. The complaints by the councillors were justified, because it is for that reason we went down and we did our investigation to find out what was happening in Cedros. And when we observed that the complaints coming from the residents and their councillors were justified, we made the appropriate intervention by drilling wells, upgrading the Granville water treatment plant, putting down automation, replacing each pipeline, increasing the carrying capacity of some of the transmission lines, etc. And in many cases, we put down 2 or 3 new booster stations so that they can get the requisite pressures towards the end of Cedros and Icacos and those areas. My personal disappointment was the fact that the councillors, they led a number of fiery protests, and the issue was politicized back then. But when the problem was solved and they were invited to participate in the achievement, they were nowhere to be found. And that's the reason why I asked, where was my friend Meru? And I think he is the chairman of the Superior Borough Corporation. And there's another councillor, I can't remember his name by this time. The message I was sending was that we have to be very careful, especially those who operate in the political landscape, that we do not allow these problems. We don't use those problems and try to politicize it to attack our political opponents. As leaders operating on the political landscape, our responsibility is to identify those problems, advocate on behalf of the residents, and when the problems are resolved, you also participate in it, because your role is not to agitate and create confusion, but your role as well is to come out and celebrate with the people and acknowledge that the problems have been resolved. So the situation in Southwest Trinidad, Sunil, it's a story, and it is a massive success story in the water sector in Trinidad and Tobago, because it touched 55,000 citizens, an area that was once called a brown zone in the Water and Sewage Authority, brown meaning unserved and or underserved for decades. And we have now turned that into a green zone, meaning that the entire area is now fully supplied by the Water and Sewage Authority with a reliable supply of water.
I understand that several other projects are set to begin soon. Can you tell us what areas are going to benefit?
Another major project that we are doing is a transmission line, a pipeline project in the Pluck Road area. That is an area in the Penal Superior region that is also considered an unserved and underserved district in the Water and Sewage Authority. So we have lobbied and we have received the financial resources from the government of Trinidad and Tobago in the public sector investment program. And it's a 6-kilometer pipeline project that we have started, and the contractors are already on the ground, and a number of communities in that Pluck Road area, Penal Superior, stand to benefit from this project, which will come to an end somewhere in April. And I can just name some of the communities. So communities like Mongol Trace, Tennant Trace, Ramcharan Trace, Santa Cecilia, Maury Trace, Timatal, Salt Mine Trace, San Francisco, just to name a few. These are some of the communities that stand to benefit, traces that stand to benefit from this project. It is costing somewhere in the region of $20 million, I am told, but the pipeline will increase the carrying capacity to get water to some of the communities on the elevated area. And it will, I expect that, similar to Southwest, to dramatically, turn around the water situation in these areas.
Minister, the Regulated Industries Commission, the RIC, is conducting rate reviews for Wasa. Is there any update on this?
Yes. Let me first start by saying this is also connected to Wasa's transformation process. Because one of the things, an issue that was identified by the transformation plan, which was laid in Parliament in 2021, I think it is. It's not a secret document. And anybody who is interested in what is taking place in the water sector, they can go to the Parliament's website and access that 2021 document, because everything that we are doing and everything that we are talking about here was mentioned, and it is stated in that transformation plan. And one of the issues identified in the transformation plan was that Wasa was operating on an outdated rate structure, and that there is no way the authority can get revenue on its own to fund its own operation. Because the last time we increased water rates in Trinidad and Tobago was in 1991 or 1992. But not only that, the document also pointed to the fact that Wasa never prepared a business plan justifying a rate review, justifying a rate review application with the Regulated Industries Commission. Because one of the things that our utility agencies must do is to make an application to the RIC justifying an increase in their rates. They can't do it on their own. The government has no say in the process, save to, at the end of the process, say whether or not they're going to give the green light or not give the green light to the recommendations of the RIC. But an important document that the utility agencies must complete to justify a rate review is a business plan. And the transformation document recognized that Wasa never did a business plan since its existence. So there was no model. They couldn't face any model. But to do a business plan, you must get all your data. You must get all your facts, your statistics. You must get all of the critical information to make that justification to the RIC. And as a result of that, the transformation called for Wasa to complete a business plan. That plan was completed, I think, early in 2024, 2023. The first business plan that was ever produced by the authority. So the plan was submitted to the RIC, and the RIC is still in the process of interrogating that business plan. It is the first time the RIC, since its existence in statute, is also interfacing with Wasa with respect to a business plan, the first of its kind, generated by the authority. So the RIC is interrogating the document. They have met with Wasa's board on several occasions to get a better understanding of the submission and its potential impact on the various levels of its customers in Trinidad and Tobago. So we are a long way still, because we are now treading on new territory with respect to a rate review in the water sector. I don't see it happening in 2025. I still don't see it happening in 2026, given the amount of work and groundwork that still has to be done. So let me say it, that there's no way, given the fact that we are treading on new territory with respect to a rate review for the water sector and what Wasa has to do and what the RIC has to do, it just cannot happen in 2025 and in 2026. So perhaps in 2026, at the end of 2026, the RIC will now be in a position to start interfacing with the public on its draft determination for a rate review for the water sector towards the end of 2026, because by that time, they would have done a lot of work understanding the submissions made by Wasa. But so whilst the RIC is interrogating the business plan submitted by the Water and Sewage Authority, plans are already in place for the establishment of a quality of service standard for the Water and Sewage Authority, which is a standard set by the RIC to ensure that Wasa not only improve but maintains a certain level of service for all of its customers. And if they do not comply with that level of service, the RIC can impose certain sanctions on the authority. So you're seeing a number of moving parts taking place. The business plan, which will take care of the rate review process, was completed. The RIC is interrogating the document. But the RIC, as an independent agency, which is charged with the responsibility to ensuring that utility agencies meet their standards of service to its customers, is working closely with Wasa towards ensuring that this quality of service standard is completed and published, so that when customers feel aggrieved by the authority by not getting the level of service that the authority is supposed to provide to them, the RIC can take appropriate action against the authority on behalf of the citizens.
Minister, is there any update on the app to actually report leaks and request truck one supply of water?
Oh yeah, so a lot of work went into to that app. We were supposed to have launched it last year in October, but we deliberately delayed it because T&TEC was doing a similar app, and we thought that it would be useful for both T&TEC, the Water and Sewage Authority, and to an extent TSTT as utility agencies to operate on one app, on one platform where customers can go in there and get certain services. So it was delayed to allow for a seamless integration of parts of Wasa's operation, T&TEC, and to some extent TSTT. So I'm happy to report that in the month of February, that app will be launched, and customers will now, who subscribe to the app, will be able to report leaks, report areas where there's a need for road restoration, water trucking services. They will be able to pay their bills. But not only that, but on the T&TEC component of the app, customers will be able to put in reports where a street light needs to be repaired, and some of the basic services that are offered by T&TEC, they will be able to go into that app, subscribe to the app, and make requests and submit reports of complaints, etc. So I'm looking forward to this app being launched in the month of November, because it will continue. What you will see is a continuation of the improvement and efforts being made by the Ministry of Public Utilities and its agencies, T&TEC, Wasa, TT Post, TSTT, making every effort to allow customers to interface with them utilizing technological platforms.
Switching the conversation to the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission, over the past few months, there have been some rumblings at T&TEC where workers embarked on some protests. An injunction was granted where preventing the workers from engaging in that illegal action. Any update on this?
So that matter is before the Industrial Court. The Commission filed a complaint against the OWTU for engaging in illegal industrial action, as well as contempt of court proceedings. So the matter is engaging the Industrial Court. I am told that the next date for hearing is either in May or June of this year. But on the point of the injunction, it is still in effect, preventing the workers from engaging in unlawful industrial relations activities. And since then, we have seen less disruptions taking place. The levels of absenteeism that we would have seen over a period of time has now, we are no longer seeing that. And I'm happy to report that the industrial relations climate in T&TEC has improved tremendously. But I also have to say that I continue to encourage the management, the board of T&TEC to ensure that you have collaboration taking place in the spirit of good faith with the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, listening to the concerns of the union and engaging in the collective bargaining process for the improvement in wages and other issues that the union is raising. I have deliberately, there's no room for the Minister of Public Utilities in this process. I have been lobbied publicly to get involved, but I wish to state that in the collective bargaining process, there is no room for the Minister of Public Utilities, save to encourage the board and the union and the management of the authority to continue to collaborate with each other to have the issues that are being raised by the union ventilated in the best interest of all of the parties, the commission, as well as all of the employees of T&TEC.
Mr. Gonzales, can you say when the proposed rate increase for T&TEC customers will take effect?
I can't say. The last I reported on that is that the matter is before the Finance and General Purposes Committee, which is a subcommittee of the Cabinet. And a week or 2 weeks ago, just a week ago, I would have reported in the national media that given the priorities of the FNGP at this point in time, I don't anticipate that in 2025, the Finance and General Purposes Committee will complete its interrogation of the submission made by the RIC. So it is a matter that is under active consideration, but for 2025, I don't know for 2026 what will happen. But the Finance and General Purposes Committee continues to interrogate the submissions made by the RIC, and the possibility of any rate increase in 2025 is not one that can possibly happen, given the amount of work that has to be done still.
Elections are on the horizon, Minister, and you are about to complete your full term as the Minister of Public Utilities. Is this what you expected? And hypothetically, if your party were to succeed in the next general election, would you like to continue in this portfolio?
That's a very good question. There is nothing that could prepare you. That's my honest view for this job. There are certain fundamentals that are very important towards ensuring that you are successful in public service. It requires hard work, it requires personal sacrifice, but most importantly, it requires a desire and a love for public service and for people. But from time to time, a lot of surprises come your way. So it has been a very challenging experience, but it has been a rewarding experience in many ways. The Ministry Social Program, where we make basic utilities available to citizens who cannot afford it, is just one example of the things that I enjoy. Where a citizen cannot afford a water tank, and because of that program, the Utilities Assistance Program, you can provide them with a water tank. You can provide them with electricity services because they cannot afford to wire their homes. You can afford to give them electricity by the extension of electricity grid to communities that never had access to power. Under the Community Water Improvement Program, the number of communities that I ventured all over Trinidad and Tobago and the lives that we have touched, where people get water for the very first time, communities getting water for the very first time, it is something that is personally rewarding. There's so much more to be done, and the work will never stop. But this job, despite the challenges, has been really rewarding for me. I expect the PNM to continue to be in governance, and I expect the people to continue to repose their trust and confidence in the current arrangement. With respect to how do I proceed and where do I prefer, I would leave that to the discretion of whoever has the power to do so. Safe to say that I enjoy public service, and wherever I'm asked to perform, once it means, and it would redound to the improvement of lives and advancing the lives of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, I would be more than happy to do so.
Minister, over the past 4.5 years, what would you say is your greatest achievement?
My greatest achievement, I would say, is the strides that we have made in the water sector. Improving and increasing the levels of service from 31% in 2020 to 65% and going and inching towards 80% by the end of 2025 is nothing but a massive accomplishment. It is not a personal accomplishment. I don't regard it as a personal accomplishment because there is no way a minister can do so on his own. A minister can set the policy framework, get the resources from the government, and hope and encourage the team players in the various state agencies to work towards making good use of the resources so that people's lives can be improved. I would say that the work that was done in the water sector, the transformation that we have put in place, the new leadership that we've put in place, and the communities that are now getting water for the very first time, moving that level of service from 31% to 65% and inching towards 80% towards the end of 2025 is a monumental achievement. And I think for me personally, this is something that will continue to remain close to my heart. And I hope that if after the election there's a new Minister of Public Utilities, that new Minister of Public Utilities, like this new CEO of Wasa, is coming into the ministry where you have a strong policy platform to that will continue to evolve and improve the utility sector in Trinidad and Tobago. And once you continue along that vein, I think we will continue to strengthen the utility sector in Trinidad and Tobago, where we will be second to none in the entire region.
Well, we have been speaking with the Minister of Public Utilities, the Honourable Marvin Gonzales. Minister, thank you very much for joining us on this week's episode. It's been a very comprehensive analysis, I would say, in terms of what we talked about, Wasa, TSTT and T&TEC as well. Thanks for joining us. It's probably your third or fourth or fifth time on Delving Deeper. If I were to use a cricket analogy, I would say you have the most innings here as the batsman on Delving Deeper.
Let's say I complete a full test match. But thank you very much. And, it's always an opportunity for me and a platform to talk about the amount of work that we are doing all across Trinidad and Tobago. And the Delving Deeper platform has provided me with that opportunity to talk about what we are doing, because unfortunately, you go and you conduct a similar interview in another television station, and you simply do not have the time, 5 or 10 minutes time slot that is afforded to you to do interviews, to speak, comprehensively on the work that you're doing. And I think the Delving Deeper program is a wonderful program that the Ministry of Public Utility appreciates, where we can go and sit and have meaningful conversation to talk about what we are doing for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So I have to thank you, Sunil, for that, and to thank the team at Delving Deeper for providing us with that platform where we can talk to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago.
Minister, thank you very much for joining us. And on our programming note, Delving Deeper will resume on Sunday, March 9th, following a short hiatus to facilitate TTT's live coverage of Carnival 2025. Minister, of course, it is the Carnival season, and we have to make way for TTT to provide that coverage. Be sure to join us then, and do have a safe Carnival. On behalf of the entire group, I am Sunil Lalla. Good night.